I want to first talk about Cody's journey throughout the series because, once we first meet him, we know that he's been sheltered in some sort of way and he has certain ideas about the world that aren't necessarily accurate. He kind of has this rose colored glasses view of things. And immediately he kind of has to come of age and learn so much about society that he thought he knew that wasn't entirely the case. So,
Mhm.
from episode 1 to episode 7, what ultimately do you think his trajectory and journey looked like as far as becoming the hero or the villain that he
Mhm.
wanted to be?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because Cody's lived 19 years inside, confined by his parents, who are loving parents, which I think is the cool difference between him being trapped. It's that he was being protected,
Yeah.
and so there's this naivete that goes with him. I think he's very smart and very intelligent. And like a Virgo, he believes he knows it all, but there's so much that he doesn't know, and I think within the 7 episodes, you kind of watch Cody grow 10 years of life. I think for 19 years, he probably stayed stagnant. And then within a month of his life, he grew. Uh, he actually became the 19-year-old that he is.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really cool and relatable to Cody. I found it in myself where I feel like I know something and then I learn and I'm like, whoa, okay, I wasn't right. And that I wasn't right is a very strong quality to have. And Cootie learning that is definitely something that I feel like people could hang on to and relate to.
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure. And one thing that's so interesting about the series as well is the use of practical special effects. Like,
Yeah.
no CGI, but having to deal with smaller set pieces and larger set pieces as an actor. What was that experience like for you, having to deal with miniature set pieces and having, on screen appearing bigger than everyone else and everyone having to use, ladders, whatever, to
All of
even be in
that.
scenes with you. What was that experience?
Yeah, mental gymnastics, man. That's what that was. It was a lot of mental gymnastics. I didn't look at my scene partner once at all. Anybody I work with, I was staring at a green tape mark where their eyes would be. And
Mm,
so it definitely came with a lot of work offset and a lot of work within the rehearsals to connect and exchange energy with each other and then bring that to the set. But
mm.
it wasn't easy at all. There was actually a lot of times on cut, I go up to Boost like, man, was that right? How did I
Mm.
do? Because uh, on one half of my brain, I'm thinking about my choices. I'm thinking about my reasons, my tactics, my beat shifts. And then on the other side of my brain, I'm thinking about, well, I got to stay in this position. I got
Yeah.
to stay hunched over. I got to remember that I'm too big for this room. I have to remember that that's where her eyes are. I have to remember that this is the face she makes when she says this line. So it's a lot of mental gymnastics, but at the end of it, I just I felt stronger, I felt smarter, and I'm a bit more keen when it comes to the acting.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I can't wait for more people to see this series. And
Thanks, man.
congrats on this role. Can't wait to see the Steven Soderbergh series as well coming up soon as well. But
Yeah.
hope you enjoy the rest of your day and congrats.
Shout out to that poster behind you
Yes,
up on
sir.
the
Yes,
wall. I
sir.
see
I was
that.
actually talking to Ashton, I think, for I think it was during Juice and the Black Messiah press. And
Oh,
then
nice.
he was like, wait, he was like, wait, I think I'm behind you. And I was like, wait, what are you talking about? And I'm like, what? You're
There he
literally
is
all
right
behind me.
there.
But yes,
That's
yes.
funny.
Enjoy the
All
rest of
right,
the day.
man.
I really want to dive into Scat's death and kind of how that kind of sets the rest of the series on a trajectory. And it puts certain characters in certain positions. And it gets really is like this overarching theme, an overarching event that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the series. So, Elias, to start off with you, when I was watching the scene, it's like I felt like I knew where it was going, but I was still like, I'm like, oh, they're not about to kill my guy off like right now. But then it had so much meaning as opposed to like what rest was going on in the season, especially we're coming out of still in a pandemic, but there were so many things as far as like healthcare and like access and just capitalism that was behind this death. So how did it feel for you when you first realized that this is the trajectory that the character was going to go on and he was going to kind of be like not this martyr but like just a big catalyst for Cootie and the rest of the characters?
Um, there are many different ways and things that I felt. You know, the actor in me was like, oh man, you know, my time here was cut short. And then, you know, I think like you said, watching it as compared to like reading it and like finding out, as someone who's like watching it, yeah, you know where it's going. And I think that's okay because, you know, it's a TV show, but we're not like doing TV. We're not here to, you know, pull plot twists and things like
Yeah.
that. We tell an authentic story. And that is just something it probably just happened 2 seconds ago. I'm in New York City. There's so many kids riding bikes, you know, and there's so many kids who are on their way to the hospital right now, you know, who can't be seen. You know, which I've seen with my own eyes. So I think for me, I appreciated how true and authentic it was. And like, aside from, yeah, like I said, like being an artist and like wanting to work more, I don't know, I was proud to be a part of something where I was like, okay, like I know that this has meaning and that this is going to end. We talked about earlier about highlighting other people's qualities and, you know, giving them the ability to use those and like wield that, you know, properly in the world and like kind of change a lot of things and a lot of lives for different people. I think, yeah, it's something I have no choice but to respect and like, you know, be proud of at the end of the day. So I'm really proud of this character, honestly.
Yes, yes. And Brett, for you, you know, one of you know, I feel like one of my favorite moments of this series is kind of like this visceral reaction that Felix has when he finds that when he sees him there, and then just like every interaction that he has after that is kind of like it all traces back to his death. And this is a character that we've seen in the first few episodes is very happy, is very loving, and he kind of becomes jaded by this, you know, tragic event that happened to his friend that he witnesses this happen. So how do you think your character even changes in his own thought process as far as what happens to him and kind of like how the change that he wants to see instituted after this?
Totally. I think, you know, Felix is one of those people, like you said, there's something about Felix at the beginning of the series where, again, he's the homie with the car. So to me, that represents this sort of like mental freedom. You know, if I can't do anything, I can go sit in my car, I can go take a ride. And he sort of, you know, is a part of this group of people. And he's always been helping Jones out with, you know, activism and organizing in the community. But I don't think it ever has hit as close to home as it did with Scat. Yeah. And I think, you know, something changes in your chemistry when you witness someone that you love pass on. And I think for Felix, it really lit a fire under him, not only to check his own sense of freedom and what the world is, but also the people around him. He has a really crazy argument with Jones. And, you know, subsequently, every single person in the stories, he checks them on their sort of privilege after that to not have been there when this was happening. And so, yeah, it was really awesome to play a character where he got to have so much change and got to feel sort of connected to this major event that helps to propel the story into a completely different direction. It's like I feel like Felix, that was his moment of calling to know what he needs to do next.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for your time. I cannot wait for everyone to see this series, and I hope you both enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
All right, thank you. Take care. Kara, I'll start with you first. Can we talk about Jones's differing perspective on like the action to take against, you know, the systems at play, the powers that be? We see that, you know, her and Carmen's character, Lafayette and Singh, they kind of differ on, you know, what action to take. So how would you best describe Jones's viewpoint, and especially how that ends up and what happens at the end between Jay and Cody based upon kind of like her perspective on the situation?
Yeah, I think that Jones is moving from a place of, I believe that the people have more power than they think. And I think that that is how I'm moving in the world and navigating the world. I'm meeting people where they are. I'm not trying to force anything on them, but there is there's a revolutionary spirit of change. And there's a revolutionary spirit of like to let the people know that we can come together. And it doesn't matter where you are in your journey, I'm gonna meet you where you are. And I think that that might be the difference between La Francine and Jones in that particular intersection.
Yes, yes. And Olivia, for you, first off, Flora is like one of my favorite characters on the show, especially when she first comes on screen. I'm like, I love this character. Because when you throughout what we know so far about the show and the marketing and just the log line, we know that we're dealing with our lead character who is different. But you know, it's so interesting to see Flora, who is also different from everyone else in different ways. So how do you think that her, you know, kind of trajectory throughout this series is kind of juxtaposed with what Cody's going through at the same time, and also just over the theme of like, you know, not realizing what people are capable of, you know, subverting ableism. There's a lot to discuss, but how do you think overall her story is juxtaposed with the main theme of the series?
You know, I think what I feel about this series is that like we all as young people have the ability to change the world, you know, to put it lightly. And I think we all do it in so many different ways. And for Flora, she does it in her pathway is through food, but it's really just through love and how she loves and how she interacts. And the thing that she thought she might not, or maybe didn't have enough of, like, she can give it. And so when she meets Cody in his beginnings of his journey, she sees something in him that she can relate to, somebody that has spent a lot of time in isolation or a lot of time having people might not understand them or fear them. So I think there's something really pure about the way that they navigate this new space together, and exciting for her because, as she says later in the series, so much of she's so, people are so predictable. So she's so bored of watching people make the same decisions and do the same kind of, make the same speeches and routines. So there's something really unique about how Cody is so fresh to the world, that he's kind of not tainted by certain things and really has a pure sense of things. And so when he goes about things, be it right or wrong, I think it's exciting for her to kind of lend her hand, lend her experience, but also not judge it. I think her ability to kind of be present and love is really admirable.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for your time. I cannot wait for more people to watch this series. I need to talk about it. But I hope you both enjoy the rest of your day. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Trey, so good to see you.
Yeah, it's so good to see you too. Because first off, I want to talk about your character, Love Francine, and kind of her and her husband's decision to, you know, decide to shield Cody away from a lot of things that they thought would bring him harm, but also just to know already, have this foresight to this person that he could be. Should you speak to her decision to do that, but also the decision of her differing like expectations on the government systems? Like her and Jones have this disagreement where, you know, they think that, of course, the powers that be in the systems could be differently, and they kind of, you know, differ in what they think. So ultimately, with your character, what can you speak to, like her decision with Cody, but also her overall idea of what, you know, being free looks like?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think that Francine is a very typical mum in some ways, surrogate mum, but you know, caretaker of a child that she. I think we all start out as parents believing and hoping that our children are special and that they're going to do amazing things in the world. In the case of Cody, it's really going to happen. He really has that potential. He's already, you know, clearly this unusual looking person, which, you know, is going to be both a blessing and a curse for him as he walks through life. So she's already recognizing his potential, but then she also, like I think so many parents, myself included, you know, figuring out how to make that stay intact and remain fertile and full of its potential, while also presenting that person into the real world outside of the safety of your own home, can be a really scary proposition. And La Francine and Marty's decision is pretty radical, and it's pretty sort of extreme in that they just decide, okay, you're not going out ever. No one's going to see you until you're really ready. And we don't think you're really ready till you're 21. And I mean, that's a whole childhood inside the house. So Cody has very different ideas once he finally gets a taste of what the real world looks like. And I guess, you know, at some point she has to sort of like bend to that. But the activist in her is absolutely convinced that he has the potential of being a leader. And and so, you know, I think she has this sort of like quandary, like this sort of like sort of oxymoron, like running through her all the time, which is like, you know, get him out there, get him prepared, but also keep him inside, you know, and keep him away from the threats that are going to come at him. So yeah, I mean, I feel the same sort of dilemma as a parent in America every day, actually. You know, just knowing that I want to nurture like creative, critical thinking minds that can go and be anything and do anything they want, but also recognizing not everyone's going to see my kids the way I see my kids. And you know, that's something that the show really explores, like on a very fundamental level, you know, that like how do mythologies sort of like even like develop. So I think, you know, one person's good is another person's bad, one person's hero is another person's villain. I think La Franci's approach to that is kind of old school. You know, she's still quoting, like, you know, she's still talking about Che Guevara and, you know, a certain sort of approach to protesting and organizing that is all about a leader at the front. Whereas Jones, who's this younger generation of activists, understands that it has to be like more of a sort of intersectional, sort of like grassroots coming together of people that are all sort of like working en masse to sort of come to some kind of change. And so they definitely sort of butt heads in that way, but in the end, I think everybody, all these players are really trying to sort of just shake up the system and figure out how to wake people up.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed this conversation. I cannot wait for more people to watch this series, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Why do you think Prime Video specifically was such a good home for a project like this and a project from Boots Riley? Kind of know what we know about Sorry to Bother You, why I feel like this was perfect for Prime Video.
Yeah, so, you know, with Boots, I met Boots right after the Sundance Film Festival and was blown away by his film and thought I'd never seen anything like it. And he's a singular artist, and I was excited by the possibility of what he could do in this form, right? So pursued him, we spoke for a while, made a development deal, and the first idea he pitched was a show about 13-foot tall giant who leaves his house for the first time when he turns 19. So, and that was inspiring and amazing, and then you develop it for a while. When we went to market, you listen to what the market's telling you, right? And we were fortunate to have a ton of people were engaged by the show. It's got to be, it's kind of simple. Amazon was wildly passionate about it. Like Jen Psaki was on the very first Zoom. We did 3 Zooms. They were just super passionate into it. And Boots, there were 2 things we wanted. We both wanted the resources. You've now seen the show. It's wildly complex to make. So it required both real resource support to get everything on the screen that we wanted to pull off, to get his vision on screen. And then he was excited, and we were to hit as large an audience as possible. So the possibility of being the reach that Amazon has, and we didn't want to just hit, we want to hit everybody. We want, all demographics, all classes, and so give as many people the possibility to see this show in both ways, both experience its joy, just its brilliant visuals, but obviously as importantly, its message and its ideas. And so the opportunity to do this on Amazon seemed undeniable to us.
Yes. And I'm sure this was a part of Boots's vision, but I want to speak to the fact that the effects that are used in the series are very much practical. It's no CGI, and just only kind of imagining the actors alongside Jharrel in these scenes, even the miniature set pieces, the larger set pieces. Why do you think that was so important to have that be an aspect of the series as far as its development?
Yeah, I think this is where kind of the aesthetics, the sensibility, even the politics are all interrelated. So one, it's certainly on just a simple level for Boots, right? His style and aesthetics, the handmade quality, he wants the audience to be a part of how he makes it, right? So you can see the seams occasionally. That's very intentional, right? So it's real, it's happening. He doesn't want you to experience this at a distance. It's CG and it's artificial, right? So even though the ideas are radical, 13-foot tall giant. There are much smaller people in the show at some point. Super fast people. There's all kinds of dazzling moves, but he wants you to experience them as much as possible as if they're real and possible. And then it informs everything on the set too, right? Because the actors, there's some CG in it, but by and large, they're interacting with each other. They're interacting with physical objects. It's handmade, and they experience that when they're filming it. So it keeps everyone on the ground and allows it. I think it's what's pretty unique about his sensibility, which is it can feel as kind of naturalistic as a Moonlight in terms of just how you experience it, but it's as dazzling as any kind of comic book extravaganza you've seen, right? And so it's giving you the best of all worlds in a way, which is you get a sumptuous visual feast, but there's a texture that it feels real. The actor, it feels like they're really in it and living it and experiencing it.
Yeah. It's something like a Moonlight meets The Boys, kind of. I
Yes.
think something.
Yes.
Very much that. Very much that.
Yes. And so it's like two things. That's what Boots' specialty is, which is it's two things that you don't think belong together. And somehow watching it, you're like, this is just right. And it allows an audience to lower its inhibitions and kind of go with something, for media res, and for him, God knows for Boots, like, we want to make things that like you lean in, where you feel like, oh, if I look away, if I go grab a beer, I might miss something, And this is something where hopefully, I love that you watched in the binge, because we want people to feel glued to this, and it rewards careful and close viewing.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Michael, and I can't wait for everyone to see the series.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.